All right, welcome back to another episode of Outside the Grounds. You've seen him before in early episodes. We heard kids talk about him. It's the man, the myth, the legend, Michael Kokoszka, aka Koko. He's our strength and conditioning guy here. Of course, the main star of the show is Washalewski, our host. We love him, and so let's kick it off like every other episode. Tell us a little bit about your background, how you came into this program, where you're at right now in your development.
Yeah, so my name's Michael Kokoszka. Everyone at Rake, or everyone in the baseball world that I know calls me Koko. And I'm the strength and conditioning coach here at Rake City, and I coach the A11U team, or just a 11U team here at Rake. And I came over with Rake when I was, or with Team DeMarini at the time, at around 14. I came over with Clarendon Hills Cardinals, and then played here throughout high school, played college ball at South Mountain Community College, Ren Lake, and the University of New Orleans, and now I'm currently at University of Illinois in Chicago studying kinesiology and nutrition.
So let's talk a little bit about kinesiology, right? Because that's definitely a weight room term, right? And it's about basically the body mapping, right? Or can we go a little bit in depth just so I understand? Because I know like a bunch of weight trainers have to have knowledge and like that degree to be certified. So let's go into that a little bit.
Right. It's just the study of human movement from like the cellular level and then to us living beings.
Okay.
Is there a part of the body that you can't name, that you don't know of? Or you know, because every time I've talked to you, you've known.
No,
like,
I think I know.
The medical term, like, of each body part and how it functions, it functions, what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, I think I know. I think I know every single thing in the body. Every artery, every vein, every muscle, every ligament, every tendon.
Now, is that something?
Every bone.
Is that something that you've always cared about, like how your body works, like what's the purpose of certain stuff? Because just talking to you off the podcast, dude, like you live, breathe, and die by all this. So obviously you gotta love it. So just the importance of it and like knowing what everything does. How does that translate to helping our guys in the weight room and doing all that stuff you do?
Yeah, right. Something in the weight room that you got to look for is like just something basic is like form, right? Mm-hmm. So a kid comes in here and he doesn't have the greatest form. I need to be able to be like, okay, so like why doesn't he have the best form? What other muscles are compensating to make that happen and why he's looking like that? And then just to keep the kids safe, right? If I don't know what muscle we're acting on or is performing the action of whatever movement we're doing,
yeah,
you know, it's hard to like monitor and make sure everyone's being safe.
And obviously you've done pretty much everything that you're giving to the kids, so you know what you're supposed to feel, what part of your body's supposed to be activated, all that. So let's dive into it. So the importance of strength and conditioning for high schoolers. What do you got on that?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and I think strength and conditioning is just as important as everything else, right? So if you're trying to be the best baseball player you can be, or you're coming into Rake and trying to get the most out of the strength and conditioning program here, you really have to take pride in it and want to get stronger, want to get better, want to move better. But obviously if you just show up and you think that it's going to be a cakewalk and it's going to be easy, it's probably not the right spot for you, yeah, in terms of, you know, wanting to really get better.
Because I don't think most people realize that there's really two parts to it. Obviously, like the development side on the field, all that stuff, but then also the weight room is a big part of it. Like you need to build a solid base, a solid foundation to be able to perform at a high level. And just looking at this winter overall, we've had guys obviously that have been in the weight room, but not to the exact T. Maybe it's not what they needed, or they weren't doing the stuff that's going to benefit them. So we've had different cases where there was like before after pictures of guys, after spending months in the weight room, gaining weight, putting on like lean muscle mass and all that. And I think that's something that the kids really, really actually enjoy doing.
Yeah.
Because, they're challenging themselves on the field or in here on the baseball side, but also I think you brought that aspect of challenge yourself in the weight room and just get after it.
Well, and to the point of like, especially like with the younger kids, like 14-year-olds who. So let's first off, before I get to that part, how the old myths, or I don't know if they're true. Where do you limit on someone in weight training? Okay, so let's say they got a good base foundation. Like, how young would they go? Like, if they have good form, how young is it good for them to start lifting weights?
Yeah, so another fantastic question, and it's kind of funny because you could seriously start weight training as young as possible, as long as it's monitored by the right people, and as long as it's done, it's as safe as possible, and the person who's monitoring that person is really making sure that all the boxes check. You guys might have seen like these 10-year-olds on Instagram lifting barbells. Now I don't think it's the greatest thing for a 10-year-old because they're probably not going to do it right because of their attention span.
Yeah.
They're probably not going to do it right because they seriously just don't have that much body control. But you could teach it at a very low intensity to start, and it could just be something like putting a PVC pipe on a 10-year-old's back and saying do 10 air squats. That's considered weight training. So as young as the kid really wants to be honest.
And obviously able to.
Yeah, and able to.
So I know also this is probably your first year doing this, so you probably picked up some traits and habits on the fly. Would you say how important is it, because I know when I was working out in college, and I had a lot more respect for my weight trainers who would pick up deficiencies on a fly, and then they're able to micro that, oh, you can't do this today, your hips are blown up, do this other alternative stuff. Is that something that you figured that you had to pick up? How good do you think you're on that aspect?
Yeah, so at the beginning of the year, kids would come up to me and be like, Koko, my hips hurt, I need some hip stretches. And at first I was a little all right, I'll give you some hip stretches, maybe not then and there, but now I kind of have a word bank of, say a kid says his hip hurts, well I ask him where it hurts, and then we kind of talk a little bit. I kind of have a self-diagnosis.
like the doctor's diagnosis.
Yeah, right.
Okay, well, this does it, this,
and then I just tell the kid, I grab these stretches that I have in a word bank pretty much that does that stretch for where he's pointing to, and then we try to see if that's the actual spot that's bugging him, or if it's another spot, and we do another stretch. But just trial and error of, hey, how's this feeling? Is this getting pushed too much? Or just really having good communication with the kids in terms of say they do come up to me and they do have an injury, then we kind of just talk through it and just see what the best plan of action is.
And talking about injury, the workload that kids have, how does that play into effect? Because some guys, I know everybody is different, but some guys might not be able to long toss 3 times a week, or do full body workouts 3 times a week. They might need to be more detailed with stuff. So how do you manage the workload of the guys that come in the building?
It's a lot of just word of mouth. A kid coming in and saying, "Hey Koko, I'm just not feeling great today."
Yeah.
So we could gear it back. We could do last week's weight that they did. They could cut their weight in half of what they're doing that week. But it's really just the communication.
The importance is they communicate with you so you prevent the injury.
Yeah, and we don't get to that point, or if we're already at that point, then we just do the most we can at that time.
Yeah.
And it's not just the guys who come in. How frustrating is it when you write a program and a guy will be here for a whole week, take a lift or 2 off, come back saying like he's frustrated with his results and he needs help from you, and how frustrating is that? Like, how do you channel that to the respect, like as respectfully as possible, to let them know like this is a program, like everything's calculated for each day of the week,
Right.
And like if you take, like not just take days, because obviously there's reasons everything for it, but if you miss that day, how frustrating is it for you? Because you're not just making a weekly plan, you're on the monthly to bi-monthly type of programming. So I think that's as crucial. Like you could miss maybe one hitting day, but like weight room day, if you're trying to build, talk about body composition wise, all that, like that happens by little bricks, right?
Yeah. So there's really kind of two aspects to that. It's, we're trying to, in the weight room, we start off, say the 14-year-olds, they start off with really basic movements, and then throughout the weeks, throughout 4 weeks or that month that they do these basic movements, if we perfect them, we can move on from them. And when kids aren't here, it literally just takes them back a week or two, so they kind of have to go back and try to perfect those movements again, and we can't progress to the next thing. Along with trying to set micro goals for these kids, right? So if a kid wants to improve 25 pounds on his squat, and he says, I'm going to show up 4 weeks in a row, and I'm going to gain 5 pounds on the squat per week, right? If he doesn't show up per week, he sets himself back a week or even 2. So it is pretty frustrating, but at the end of the day, as long as they keep coming in consistently, relatively consistently, and whoever comes in the most consistently is going to get the most out of.
Yeah, that's what I noticed. That's what I noticed. Like, it's just a high school. We talked about high school, like you brought up, but with our 14s, first time they had this program, and from day one, people were so uncoordinated, didn't know how to line up with step ups or just basic stuff, and now we got them at a basis where they are hinging properly. They know what hit like IR, ER stuff is, and all that. And I think, okay, so they might not have gotten as strong as like a high schooler would, but that foundation, everything, their awareness, like I think that is just more important to them at that different level.
Yeah.
Let's touch on the importance of like eating habits and whatnot, because a lot of guys that came in the building, for the most part, it was, hey, let's try to put some weight on you, and what was it? Once a month we would do. Was it once a month we do weigh-ins?
Yeah, once a month.
And we'd play some type of like Rocky music or something, like weigh-ins. Everyone was standing around the scale, and it was hype. Like you got dudes,
chugging waters.
Dudes come in and be like, hey, I ate like 4 PB&Js before I came in today or something, So, like, kids eat that up. They love that. So, like, let's touch on the importance of, for the most part, eating and eating right.
Yeah, right. So I wish I can't eat for the kids, right? If I could, I probably would, and they'd gain weight a lot faster. But I think the most important thing was just communicating to them that they need to be a little bit more educated on nutrition in general, right? So kids are like, oh, how do I gain weight? How do I gain weight? Well, it's really not that hard. There's only one way to gain weight, and it's to eat. And it's literally the only way.
Yeah.
Stay hydrated and eat. And if you just make these small adjustments over time, right? You could take like our highest weight gainer, Yak, for example. When he first started, he was just making a little adjustments to his diet, and he was just eating just a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then once he gained that weight where he could eat that much, then I was like, all right, Yak, like we need to get another 5 pounds. Let's just eat a little bit more, but not. I didn't want it to be insane or crazy like some of the kids did take it.
Yeah.
But it's cool to see them have a passion for something.
Yeah, and
something new.
And I think that's something that goes under the table is, the nutrition. Like when I was their age, I wasn't, really trying to focus on eating the right things and whatnot. But I mean, dude, like if we start them at a young age, being able to be consistent in that aspect, it goes a long way, and it's just building good habits. Now let's like hand in hand, weight gain and injury. What's like say we have a kid who's trying to gain weight. He gains a lot of weight, but it's good weight. Does that, if he's not doing anything else besides just trying to gain weight, say he's not being consistent in the weight room or not, staying mobile, can that lead to risk of injury?
Yeah, absolutely. Like obviously if a kid is out of shape, he's eating too much, and the demands of the game are too much on that individual and his body because of what he's doing to it. I'd assume that absolutely there'd be a risk, an increased risk for injury.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm just thinking about that, like, they're used to like 150-pound load on their joints and stuff like that, and all of a sudden they don't build those joints up, and all of a sudden they're at 185 with the same strength on the joints.
Right.
So I would just assume that'll just happen. But you gain weight the right way, you get the whole door of baseball just opens up to a different level.
Is it true that mass equals gas?
To a certain extent, right? I think they said that if you're like a high school pitcher or something, mass will literally equal gas until like you're like 5'10", 180 pounds, or 6 foot, 180 pounds, and then after that 180 pound mark,
there's a lot of other variables.
There's a lot of other factors.
Mobility.
Yeah. There's a lot of other factors.
There is, dude. There is. So, this is your second year coaching the youth?
Yeah, second year.
Second year. How's that been? Working with the young guys, because you coming in here, you obviously work with the youth coaching, and then you also get a taste of the high schoolers during the off season. So you're pretty much know every single kid in the organization from top to bottom. But like, what are your experiences coaching with the youth?
Yeah, the youth are, for anyone who has experience of coaching, 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, it's a lot of fun, but at times their attention span could be a little bit off the wall or whatever. But it's really so much fun working with the youth kids, and for the kids that really come in and really want to get the most out of it, I truly think they are. And I believe that we're teaching them at the youth level the right things, in terms of baseball, in terms of just being a respectful person, don't disrespect, in terms of just learning how to be
a solid human.
A solid human, more than anything, because a lot of these kids at the youth level, they might not play baseball at the next level or even play high school baseball, but bare minimum we could make them some great humans and take the same goal-oriented, structured discipline into some other aspect of life, even though they're only 11 years old, right?
Yeah.
I have a quick, so I mentioned it in a different episode, I don't remember which one, but like how we were weight training here when we were playing, and you were part of that whole shindig too, and like, it was kind of unorganized and a little sloppy, but I think that has great purpose, because it was like basically like boot camp training, and just like mental toughness and like lift big, like the old traditional type of weight room. And I think that has a lot of benefits too. And your style is a lot more organized, structured, and a little bit more professional. And I know you tend to, like, let's say we had the Hell Week this year, and you weren't a fan of that. But like, do you think going one way or just the other way, like what's the balance to that? Because when I look back, I like personally on like the performance ability, like it helped me get stronger and I hit the ball harder. But that's not what I got out of that type of training. I got out, like, when stuff gets hard, I look back and, I had like the mental rock and like
I'm gonna find a way.
I did something way harder than this. I got through it, and like that caused like discipline, like stone cold nerves. Whether like, so is there like a balance between the two, like, or are you just like hardcore one way, not the other way? Like, do you see any value in like that type of boot camp training?
Yeah, in terms of the boot camp training, there's definitely some positives, but I think it's got to be done to the right people and the right like kids. Right? There's some kids who are just gonna come in here every day, and they're gonna give it their all no matter what. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, nothing is going to faze them in terms of how much work they put in. For those kids, I don't think they need it, right? The kids who are already set hey, this is what I kind of want to do with my life, and I'm gonna come in here and take advantage.
Like fully bought into the
Fully bought in.
into the goal.
Now, for the kids who are in between, I think there are days that are good for them to kind of a boot camp style workout to where they're like, man, do I really want to do this? And for the kids that do, it'll push them over the edge to the next level. And the kids that don't, they're going to be kind of back here saying, you know what? I don't think I want to do this. So I think it's good for a certain population of kids, but I think for the most part, a more structured, organized, goal-oriented style of training is the best way to go.
Yeah.
Because of, if you set really micro goals, I'm gonna gain 1 pound a week in body weight, and I'm gonna get 5 pounds stronger every single week. And if you just keep going, over time, it creates these giant leaps in what we saw.
It builds confidence too.
Right.
And how? Let's use an example. How would you? What would you say to a kid who comes in here and he's, maybe he's moving this certain amount of weight really well, but it's time for him to maybe move up a weight, but he doesn't think he can do it. Like, how do you monitor that? Like, just like, hey, let's see what you got, or is it like, let's get like some spotters on you, and I really want to you got to challenge yourself.
Yeah, I think
because I've seen you do a really good job of, hey, you've done this weight for the last week or two, it's time to move up, like challenge yourself. And I think a lot of kids don't realize that they can do it.
Yeah, it's a big thing. In the weight room, there's these kids that are lifting for the first times in their lives, and they kind of need to be told everything, right? A 110-pound kid comes up to me and he goes, "Hey Koko, what should I do? How much weight should I do for this lift?" And I'm like, I can't really tell you. I'm not your size. I'm not your strength.
Yeah.
Like, I honestly have no idea. So that's why we're gonna warm up to the weight and then get to that working weight. But for the kids who are a little bit timid, I don't think it's a big deal as long as they keep, trying to perfect that movement more than anything, especially for the 14-year-olds. If they're not comfortable to go up in weight, or for whatever reason they're not comfortable to go up in weight, still try to perfect that movement.
Mm-hmm.
And then once they feel super comfortable, hey, let's go. Let's grab some more weight.
So, but are you able to spot like when someone's kind of dogging it? Like not just like sometimes you have to get outside your comfort zone. Like, let's say one of our stronger 17-year-olds, he's been on 365 deadlift for like 3 weeks now, and like he just flatlines. Like, can you like tell like when someone like you're uncomfortable, but like let's go. Like, it's about time,
Yeah, I think that did happen maybe less than a handful of times this year. I think the more of the issue is kids who want to pack on too much weight, more than anything, than kids who are like timid to put on more weight. If a kid's really nervous on or for whatever reason wanting to increase his weight in the weight room, I don't see that as that much of a negative thing, as long as it's not like he could do it while walking or while talking or whatever. But I think more of the issue with kind of youth lifting and high schoolers lifting is that they wanted to get in the weight room and lift all this weight, but in reality that's not going to help them as much as like perfecting a weight at a movement.
Kind of ego lifting a lot.
Yeah,
and I thought you did a
lifting.
good job from what I saw monitoring that, and really not allowing kids to do that, because at the end of the day they're running the risk of injury.
Yeah.
If they're just going to come in here and ego lift. But you had like a precise plan, and it executed well. And one thing I like how you implemented was getting these guys on a good dynamic warm up, and like let's talk about the importance of a good warm up before whether it's before we lift weights, before we run, before we take the field.
Right. I think the warm up is obviously its main purpose is just to get the body moving and to get hot in a sense. But what I wanted to do with our warm up and what I pretty much did the entire year is that I wanted them to have base movements that they can perfect and just keep fine tuning every year, so that in the off season they have this warm up, they try it out, now it becomes their routine. Now when they ask me, hey Coco, what am I gonna do to warm up? Like, what am I gonna do before a game?
Yeah.
Because I might not be with them in the
Yeah.
season. They have that dynamic warm up that they did in the off season to take into the season, and maybe if they can't do it all, they do a variation of it. But they have a plan and they know exactly what
Versus
to
just
do.
going out there doing some type of, little stretch and
Right.
saying let's go.
So, is there a difference to you between like mobility work and then warming up, per se? You know what I mean? Like this, like the active stretching compared to warming up, like the mobility, like staying
Yeah.
loose. Like, what's the difference to you?
Yeah, right. So warm up is like for when these kids come in, right? It's a 5 to 10 minute thing, or 5 to 15 minute thing where they literally just get the body going, they get their heart rate up, and they're like ready to go and they're hot. Now in terms of mobility, I think it's kind of something separate from the warm up, and that kids kind of really need to take advantage of nowadays because everyone's inside sitting on their phones. So I think the mobility aspect is more like, all right, I'm gonna stretch my hips for 30 minutes and I'm gonna do a progression of these stretches, and then versus a warm up is like, hey, I need to play in this game, and this game time is in 30 minutes and I need to get hot. I'm gonna rip my warm up. But it's more to get warm than to increase mobility.
Okay, like range of motion.
Increase range of motion, right?
And I have another thought when we talk about like the goal stuff, and I'm pretty sure we've all been there with training, and I'm pretty sure we all had that as it goes on, like our outlook on overall training. Like, I'll speak for myself. When I grew up, sometimes I forgot that I was training for baseball, not being a bodybuilder. Just trying to get strong and big as possible. And then I realized that there gets to a certain point where going about that, the returns aren't as marginal as when you're growing up and you're younger. So obviously, like you said, Matt, like I believe there's a certain baseline that you have to get to strength wise to get that. But on another note is, how would you control someone? We have different categories of guys. One who don't believe in the weight room. Like, because obviously it's an aspect. What percentage of the weight room plays in the field? Because we got people who don't want to do the weight room. We got people who love the weight room. We got people who understand the reason for the weight rooms. Like you said, like, what is your why? So obviously, you get your number, like you juice up, like you hit your max. But like, there's gonna be like several days of the month where you just don't want to lift. I know we've all been there, doing stuff you don't want to do, like. What's the overall message?
Yeah, right.
To get through that mental barrier.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the weight room is just for getting more athletic, right? So if there's a kid that's already athletic, that's a pretty skinny kid, not that strong, getting in the weight room would just make him that much more athletic and that much better, and to kind of keep his athleticism. And then for the kids who are just getting into lifting, aren't that athletic of kids, hopefully it'll just overall improve their athleticism. But what was your question?
So it was like, there's like 4 questions in there. I don't know, but let's phrase this. What percent, like, when we look at, youth to high school to college to pro, right?
Yeah.
What percentage of the weight room goes into performance in the field? Let's start with the youth level, and then, because obviously as the development goes on, the weight room gets a little bit smaller, but you still gotta do it every day.
Right.
But like in different increments. Like, I think high school, the weight room is about like 65%, just get to a certain level of strength. So in your opinion, like the percentage of the weight room into performance on the field.
Yeah, like importance of the weight room. Well, for the youth kids, or for let's say the 14-year-olds who are just starting lifting, obviously it's really important. We do it here at Rake City, and we probably wouldn't if we didn't think that it was important for them. And it's pretty crucial for those young guys because they're kind of starting to learn about their bodies. They don't really know how their body works, and then I throw something at them like a movement or whatever we're gonna do in the weight room, and they have to, have the motor control to perform that movement, which then adds into more motor control going onto the field. So for those guys, 14-year-olds, super important. And I think it's kind of the same throughout high school. Everybody's going to be at a different, I was a super skinny high school kid, so I kind of needed the weight room and food as much as I could get. And then going into college and for, I guess, pro guys, it honestly just depends, right? If you're a really physical guy and most of your performance is off your muscular strength and how far you can hit a baseball, I'm sure that rotational power is really important in the weight room. And then there's guys like Jacob DeGrom, right, who could probably just get out of bed and just throw a baseball 100 miles an hour. So
let's say you have a creative player, right? Never picked up a bat, never threw a ball, never went to the weight room, right? It's a petri dish player.
Okay.
Okay, and he's 15 years old. Obviously, he's like Joe Schmo. Okay, so you just develop him. All right. So do you tell him to try and learn the best technique, mechanics wise, of hitting, or do you just take him and say get just as strong? And that's first thing. It's important.
So I have a 15-year-old, and so just take a Rake City 15-year-old.
Yeah, he's coordinated and he's a player, but he's a little iffy on the bat, iffy on the arm, and then iffy on the weight room. All of it's kind of brand new. How would you allocate his off season?
Well, first of all, right? There's a 15-year-old. We don't know who this 15-year-old. I'd first ask him. I would ask him. How important is baseball to you? Because you could make your training daily for hours, or if he doesn't want to do that, then and he plays other sports, then he just kind of does his training that way by playing basketball, football, and just trying to be an ultimate athlete at the end of the day. But say the kid's all in and he's 15 and he wants to get better. I think at the end of the day, every single thing that we've mentioned is important. So if you take away the weight room from this 15-year-old, he's going to be lacking in probably physicality, some athleticism. If you take the baseball side of things away from him, or he doesn't practice that much on the baseball side of things, he's going to lack there. And then if he doesn't eat, he's going to be skinnier. It's going to lack his baseball performance. So at the end of the day, every single thing, every single aspect is really important, which is, I think, what we kind of preach here at Rake in terms of, there's kids coming in here 4-5 days a week, and we're trying to give them all the resources possible to make them as good as they want to be or as good as they can get. So
to go off that, this is kind of a broad question, but what is what percentage of recovery for different age groups? Does a 14-year-old need the same amount of recovery as, say, a 17-year-old? Or
right. Well, 14-year-olds, first of all, are going to recover a lot faster. They're growing. They have a lot of stuff, and they have a lot of hormones in their body that are just getting going.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they're recovering faster than, say, a 25-year-old but recovery is just as important for everybody.
Yeah.
But I honestly think that most 14-year-olds are sleeping pretty good.
Sleep. We want to touch on that. That's good.
If they're, I'd hope they're sleeping pretty good. And then as far as the eating, their metabolisms are good enough to where they could kind of eat more fattier foods because they should be outside and pretty much active all day.
Yeah.
But it's just as important for everybody, and then everybody's body is a little bit different, so everybody's going to recover a little bit different.
And I think, let's talk about sleep. I would say it's good to get on a good sleep schedule, a good routine with that. The importance of sleep, that goes a long way, right?
Steroid.
I probably didn't take sleep as serious as I do now when I was in high school. but I feel like it's becoming more popular. Like, hey, get your sleep, recover.
Yeah.
And I've noticed, at least for me, that it's definitely going along.
Yeah, they say that if sleep wasn't a thing that everybody did, it would be like the biggest supplement or steroid in the world, because that's where all the muscle growth happens.
Because at the end of the day, you can be doing all this stuff, like working as hard as you want or as hard as you can, eating right, you know, getting good conditioning, all that. But if you're not sleeping,
right,
you know, you it might not all add up.
Yeah, and it's again what I kind of touched on just before this, is that if you're missing one aspect of this like training sphere of everything, weight room, what you're doing on the baseball side of things, sleep, eating, if you're missing one of those, it's really gonna just kill whatever else you're doing at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's what I neglected, is that you could work your ass off. Oh my bad. But you could work so hard in the weight room, and then you go and have a bad diet and a bad sleep schedule. Like, you're basically working on even.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, I've never found a problem growing up, like finding food and like just eating whatever. Obviously, like metabolisms. But like, dude, some of these kids don't understand how little they're eating.
Yeah, it's definitely
It's eye opening. Some of these guys' diets that were here, and like they're at 600 calories, 8 hours a day, and then they want to lift the house.
Yeah, it's definitely something that is very like under-teached, obviously, because you know we know some of this stuff now.
Yeah.
But these 14-year-olds have never been taught about any food in their entire life, and we don't even really have to dive that deep into it. We just educate them on saying, look, like, you are this body weight, you look like this for an exact reason. Like, there's a reason why you look like this, and if you want to gain weight, the only way is to eat more. It's the only way. So
and the same thing to lose weight.
Yeah, and the same thing to lose weight. You got to eat less. So.
Okay, so we got a young kid. Would you rather have him be very raw baseball wise, but could throw 90 and hit 90, or would you take, you know, a sweet swing, good arm action, and then build him up in the weight room?
So what are my two guys?
Your two guys. One guy, weird arm action, weird swing, like just raw, like powerful, like he's 90-90, he's a high schooler, right? Or you got a guy who, you know, can't, like, barrels up everything, you know, good arm action, but just weak and all that. Like, what would be easier for you to deal with?
I mean, you don't fix what's not broke. So for the kid who's got bad movements but it's working out, I think the coach kind of needs to step back and be like, hey, this is really working, and we're gonna roll with it until it doesn't. So that's the approach that I take to that kid. And then for that kid who's got you know, good mechanics, looks the part, but just doesn't have the physicality, you really just gotta be like, hey, like, we need to maybe take some less time off your game over here, because you've kind of almost perfected it. You look really good. We don't want to screw anything up along with that kid. So then we be like, hey, let's take more time.
So it's almost like a pie chart.
Yeah. So
less baseball, more weight room.
Right.
Less weight room, more baseball, and that type of deal.
Right.
Because I've seen, like, I'm sure you guys seen players like that you play against at a high level, or even with, and you're like, dude, how like, you don't lift, you don't eat right, you don't sleep, you don't do anything, but you come up and hit 3 for 4 every game. And then there's guys that, you know, take their health so seriously, all this to throw this way, and then they can't get it out, like, on the mound.
Right.
So it's like, everyone's, you brought, like you said it earlier, everyone is different.
Yeah.
Like wired differently.
But at the end of the day, like, personally, I'd rather be the guy who said, you know, I gave it all I got, versus the guy who's like, I wish I didn't go out last night.
I have a we call, like, you know, pouring water in a bucket.
Yeah.
And you're only poured from this side of things.
Yeah,
And then you have so much left on the table.
Right.
So obviously, like what you studied in school has helped you with like knowing the body, and like you've brought that to like the weight room. But let's talk about the baseball side of things. You know, you being a pitcher, me being a pitcher, and you know also working with hitters. How has like what you've learned in school and what you've studied about the body allowed you to help certain guys mechanically, like arm action, you know, rotating your hips, your pelvis, like all that? Using terms like that to get through to a guy like, hey, this is what you should feel, this is how you should move. Let's just talk about that.
Yeah, it definitely plays a role, but obviously you can't use some of these like anatomy terms when you're talking to the kid.
Yeah.
So it's more than anything trying to find the right words and the right vocabulary to get across to the kid. And a lot of the times, I think in all of our experiences, the more simple our terminology is for the kid, the longer it's going to stick with him, because he knows what everything means and he really can understand it more.
Yeah. So it's kind of like baby stepping your way into like, you know, you bring that term up and then you explain it, and then the kid kind of like grabs onto it, and we just kind of go off more with that.
Yeah, and then more about just me like taking my schooling to coaching. It's mostly about probably that vocabulary that I just said, and just
that's kind of the barrier. But like, you know, we've talked about this before. I think it's, you know, I think it's good that if a kid doesn't understand like that vocabulary, that we have other dudes in the building too, like that could use the same term but in a different way to get through.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, we'll talk about like kinesiology in school, right? But I bet you it goes along the line of like you got interested in that because of your passion for baseball. Because you were about 120, 130 pounds soaking wet growing up, not throwing hard anywheres, and then you got tired of it. And I mean, we talk about passion and like being self-sufficient, and obviously that baseball was the main passion, your why there, and obviously that was you looking for an edge, and that helped you from getting to looking like literally changing your whole self in less than a year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah, and to speak off that, it's I just kind of wanted to know, like, is it possible for a kid like me to throw 90 miles an hour? Is it possible for me to play at a university? Is it possible for me even to play college baseball? And then, you know, just diving into it more. It all started on Twitter for me, just like going on Twitter, like looking at a drill that a pitcher did and just copying it, and then looking at like how these like guys who throw really hard or these pitchers in the big leagues, like what they do, and then I just see that, and then I started to replicate it, but I didn't ever know the why to anything, right? I didn't know why I was doing the drill. I was just doing it because Garrett Cole was doing it. I wasn't doing it because I knew why. And then what really took like the next step for me is when I discovered the whys I'm doing it, and then from there I could be like, I could think of new things for myself from the knowledge that I got.
Because whether it's throwing or hitting, there's not just one cookie cutter way to get there.
Right.
And that speaks from the weight room too. Like we talked about all the aspects, you know, they have to be completed like together versus doing just one thing and neglecting something else.
Right.
There's not just one cookie cutter way, but I think the knowledge that you bring into this building, you know, and it rubs off on the kids and the dudes you work with, and just allows us to have a better understanding too.
Yeah, and it's fun for my schooling too, because, you know, I'm taking all these tests about all these anatomy terms, and then a kid asks me in here, he points to a body part and he says, that hurts, and then I kind of gotta restudy and think.
Instead of just being like, I don't even know what that is.
Right. versus saying, hey, like, let's just like roll it out or something, or as basic as just like doing soft tissue work to it.
Yeah.
To me being like, okay, all right, his one part of his quad hurts. What is that muscle?
Yeah.
What action does it perform? So then I know whatever action that this muscle performs, this kid probably can't do.
Yeah.
So just taking it to the next level.
Yeah. And I
We're
think
trying to help the kids.
yes, and since we got the young guys, the 14s in here this off season, I think we talked about it. It's just like good to get them in here and give them some type of knowledge about the weight room and how the body works and all that stuff. And I think going forward as they go into high school and start trying to get recruited, they'll have a better understanding of what they need to do to perform at a high level.
So, there's you said a word that kind of like just sparked like a whole like thought, little ladder.
Okay, sweet.
He said cookie cutter, right?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask your opinion. Like, let's so separate them, hitting wise and pitching wise. Yeah, like you can't cookie cut hitters, but like I like to think of the body as like a car. Everything looks different, but the main engines are always have to perform a certain way. Like you have to get to a certain spot, you have to get to a certain thing, but it just looks differently. That's my approach on that, like on hitting wise. And I'm pretty sure you probably, I don't know, but do you kind of say the same like with pitching mechanics?
Yeah, I think there's like a base, or there's like a, what I call it, like a template of what every pitcher should pretty much, like every box that a pitcher should check. Obviously some guys, there's going to be more or less of that, but just through my experience of looking at MLB arms, college arms, most of the guys do a lot of the similar things, obviously in a different way, but if you get those similarities kind of mapped out, then every time you look at somebody's mechanics, you could say, hey, you're not checking this box at all. So maybe that's something you try for the kid, or say, hey, we're not checking this box at all. We're not moving forward in our delivery, so we're just gonna try it, okay? And then we kind of find that happy medium to where the kid is moving forward in his delivery, but it's not too much, and he's not going back to just lifting his leg and
Do you
throwing.
have a list of rankings for that checklist? Like, for example, would you take like a beautiful, like a clean arm, like a perfect arms, like what's it called, arm slot, arm action, and then no like loaded pelvis or loaded hip and all that, or a loaded hip with a bad arm action? Like, is there things you rank more important as a pitcher?
I think at the end of the day, the arm throws the ball, so arm action has got to be number one.
I also think the like training the lower half would be easier than training a holding arm action too.
Yeah, probably.
But there are different variables that play into that too,
Right.
like mobility, anatomy of your body. Like for me, who was, I think it was Camacho I was talking about it too the other day. Like my scaps, like
No, I was there too,
yeah,
man.
I have like my scaps like kind of wing out a little bit, so like it might be a little bit different for me. Like obviously I work on it, try to get my scaps and like good posture and all that stuff, but for me, like in my program, I like to try to feel like my scaps are scooping under, and that's like the feeling and the mobility I need to get to certain positions.
Right.
And like I'm different than you, you're different than someone else, but I do agree that a certain baseline and checklist for guys to get to
Yeah.
plays.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's just talk about passion. Where'd you get this fiery passion for baseball? Where to start? Why to start? Like, do you have any siblings you got from? Any friends? Any like? I know your grandpa played. Was he your grandpa or uncle?
Yeah, my grandpa played in the big leagues for the St. Louis Browns
Kokoszka.
in the 50s.
They cut his name off.
Yeah, so when I was 18 years old, I did not want to play college baseball. I was kind of over baseball when I was a senior in high school, but right before I committed, I was like, I'm not good enough to I'm not good enough to play in the big
So
leagues.
why
Like
try?
this sucks. Why else would you play baseball if you're not trying to make it to the big leagues? So that's what my thought process was. I was like, dude, I throw 83 miles an hour and I'm 150 pounds, and Jacob deGrom's slowest pitch doesn't even stoop down to my 83 mile an hour fastball.
Right.
So, and then I got to my freshman year of college, and they just, again, told me I wasn't really good enough, and, the game was kind of whatever to me, and then I just decided, I think once I got told I was redshirted in my freshman year, I was like, screw it, I'm just going to go all in, and pretty much ever since, that day after I got redshirted, I haven't stopped training.
But through that training, there was probably, some barriers you ran into, some ups and downs, but, you stuck through it, and...
Right, yeah, it's, training...
Everything's not going to be perfect all the
Yeah.
time. You're not going to feel good every day,
Yeah. Was your progression like that?
Yeah, no,
Or and then a little.
I'll say a fun fact. I guess I threw a bullpen at University of New Orleans, and my fastball was 81 to 91, and I thought that I was gonna start throwing 81 again because I got super scared, and then I think one of my boys who plays for the Rays now kind of just he helped me out a little bit and put some more fire in me, and then 3 weeks later, after I threw a fastball 81, I threw 95 for the first time. So it's kind of wild, to be honest.
And at the end of the day, dude, if you didn't, you kind of got to believe it, believe it into reality that, hey, I could do this, versus being timid.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a giant leap that kids need to take here, right? When somebody's looking for a school or somebody, I think they just need to strive for the best place they can, and they need to believe that at least watch the games of the school that you want to go to and be like, hey, I could be that guy.
Yeah.
I could play shortstop for the University of whoever. I could be that first baseman. Oh, I could hit like that guy.
Yeah.
And I think just putting yourself in those positions and that viewpoint, because I never thought, I was a senior in high school, I never thought that I was gonna even be able to have the chance to play college baseball, and then obviously shout out Pete, he hooked me up, and it went from there.
Yeah, we're going about that. I think the kids these days are they have way too realistic of aspirations.
Right.
You say you play in the big leagues or bust, but obviously that's a low percentage of anyone going to the ranks.
It's
but
a low percentage.
Why not shoot for it? Because you could be the story that comes up.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyone could be the story. It's if you're a little too realist, you're gonna fall short.
Yeah.
But if you set outlandish goals and dreams, then you're gonna fall into a bigger success area, and you're gonna get to places where okay, well, I got there.
Right.
If I just thought I was just gonna be, a college kid, I probably wouldn't even gone to college.
Yeah,
honestly.
If anybody who played college baseball ever probably said, you know what, I'm not good enough for college baseball when they were a senior in high school or junior in high school, they probably wouldn't have played college baseball. So at the end of the day, it all comes down to saying, hey, I want to play college baseball, I want to do this, and then take that next step to say, hey, look, I'm actually good enough to play here, and then take it further. I am the dude here.
But there also has to be merit. Dream big, go to the biggest school, but you also have to have portions of realistic. Hey, where am I at right now?
Yeah, right.
I remember I overheard Pete, we had a special group 22s, and they'd meet every 2 weeks, and just is where you're at right now going to match up where you're going to be in a year?
Right.
Is stuff aligned? So it's the biggest whatever is you can't have Major League dream with a Division III work ethic.
Right, you can't say you want to go to Vanderbilt and be 150 pounds, and then you look on their roster and their lightest guy's 200 pounds.
Yeah, and nobody at Vanderbilt has 70-mile-per-hour exit vehicles. 70-mile-per-hour
right.
You know, there's baselines for everything, but like you could honestly, with you, I mean, you're a great example too. You're throwing like 68, 72 miles an hour, 120 as a freshman in college, and now you're about to throw 100 in about 6 months.
Yeah,
So
it's hopefully, man.
it's like the body is just crazy. The body is anything you want it to be, as long as you fill different boxes per se.
Yeah, exactly. The body is anything it wants to be. Exactly.
So what do you
That's a good way
think?
to put it.
What do you think? The discipline is like probably the biggest key.
Yeah, just being consistent, setting micro goals. Same thing we did in the weight room to progress. Set micro goals, which have overarching macro goals, and then you just keep knocking those out over time. With consistency, you just the improvements are crazy, right? If we had 6 months in the weight room with some of these guys, and 6 months in the weight room, and we had guys going up 5 pounds a week in strength. So just take a deadlift for example. So if a kid was going 5 pounds up every week for 6 months, that's 20 pounds a month times 6, which is he's 120 pounds stronger on his deadlift. And it's kind of just like, I kind of trick some of the kids in getting stronger, because it's like, oh, you did 6 reps at this weight last week, well, you're going to do 8 reps with the exact same weight this week, and just by that, you can manipulate the reps, or you can manipulate the weight that they're doing to just get them infinitely better, and there's kind of no way to go backwards unless you're putting 5 pounds less.
And I think you also did a good job of creating like a good atmosphere around the kids. You know, like we get the music going. You know, in a sense, some kids are like competing against each other in the weight room, but at the same time, you know, they really enjoyed it, and you did a good job of monitoring them.
Thank you.
I gotta say, a little bit every day goes a long way.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot here and there, you're going nowhere.
Yeah, right. You hit for 5 hours on Monday, and then don't hit for the rest of the week until next Monday, or you hit for 30 minutes a day.
I'm gonna hit you with one. Challenge your limits. Don't limit your challenges. Or maybe
Did you get that from a book? I
took
about 2
No.
minutes.
I said that
draw
wrong.
That one up.
Don't. Wait, hold on. Let me think. I saw it on YouTube last night.
You guys had the whole conversation. I was thinking about my thing. You just hit us with the motivational quotes on Twitter or something.
I gotta think of it.
What do you got for kids? You got a message to our kids that are watching. What do you got to say for them?
Message to the kids that are watching. Hopefully it's most of the 14-year-olds, 15, everyone.
Don't limit your challenges.
Yeah, don't limit it.
Challenge your limits.
You just said that.
Don't limit your challenge.
Don't-
Challenge your limits. Message to all our Rake City players, man. If you really want to play baseball and do it with your life, the only way is to literally put in all the work, not in just one aspect, not in just nutrition, not in just the weight room, not in just mobility, not in just the baseball side of things. Everything matters, and you know, Rake City's got the resources to provide that for you guys, and just effort is huge as well. That's all I got.
Don't let the staff be more jacked than you guys.